Brian Daboll versus Dan Campbell.
Yes.
I don't want to be the first one to talk about this one because I think people aren't going to like my answer so much. But
okay, I'll go first.
What's wrong with your face?
I don't know.
I'm joking.
Stop it.
No, go first.
No, you look at how the season went, how the season unfolded, and yeah, Dan Campbell definitely had the late push because in the last 8 games of the year, the Giants were 2-5-1, and the Lions were 6-2. So it does make it seem a lot better that Dan Campbell had that late push, but Brian Daboll had himself a damn good year. He got them into the playoffs. They won a playoff game. He got the best out of Daniel Jones. He got the most yards he's ever had in his career, the least interceptions he's ever thrown in his career, and he also got 708 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns out of Daniel Jones. He got Saquon back to having one of the best seasons of his career. He had that defense firing on all cylinders. Like, it's tough for me to say the guy in the playoffs doesn't deserve it more than the guy out of the playoffs. Like, I think Dan Campbell is deserving of praise. Mm-hmm. He deserves, a shot at it, but it realistically it should be between Brian Daboll and Kyle Shanahan in my eyes.
Huh? Well, Sam, you're actually the one who recommended this topic. I'm curious to hear because you proposed it as more of like a higher upside, if I'm not mistaken, or
yes. And God, as much as I love what Dan Campbell has done for Detroit, I mean, it's his second year. He takes them from 3 wins his first year to 9 his second. That's phenomenal. That's tripling your win total. I like where he's got the Lions going, obviously. But Brian Daboll, the thing that kind of puts me over the top for him is Brian Daboll, before he came to New York as their coach, he was the offensive coordinator for Josh Allen. He kind of oversaw the Josh Allen sort of explosion from being a rookie who looked like kind of a bust to someone who cleaned up his act a little bit more to one of the best quarterbacks in the league. That was under Brian Daboll's watch. And then he comes to the New York Giants, a team that is clearly rebuilding, a team that was not supposed to do anything this season. And this year, like Spencer said, Daniel Jones has the most passing yards he's ever had in a season, the least amount of interceptions. Like, one of the problems with Daniel Jones is he had a problem with turning the football over. He has 5 interceptions this season, and he played in 16 games. That is phenomenal for Daniel Jones. And you know what else? We all kind of knew throughout his first 3 seasons that Daniel Jones had some ability to run. Like, he was fast. You could see it, especially in that play where he ran 80 yards and tripped. But you saw he was burning dudes. But they weren't really utilizing that very much under previous coaches like Joe Judge. And now, with Brian Daboll, Daniel Jones is running the football like Josh Allen did. He has over 700 yards rushing, his career high by far. And not to mention Saquon Barkley is putting up his career high in yardage. To me, Brian Daboll has proven that he's an offensive genius. I don't know what Dan Campbell is great at besides being a leader of men. And that's important. That's very, very important. But to me, Brian Daboll has something tangible that he is great at. And the best thing to be good at right now in the modern NFL as a coach is to be an offensive genius. And I believe that Brian Daboll has proven that he is one.
I didn't want to be the one to say it first. I wanted to shield behind Sam because he's spitting facts right now. As much as like Dan Campbell and Brian Daboll is actually one I learned this philosophy from, though. But the role of a head coach, you're taking on all the media responsibilities. You don't see too many offensive defense coordinators out here doing these interviews on Pat McAfee or wherever the hell else, unless they have like a good relationship with them. You don't see too many. It's not the offensive coordinator that has a weekly radio spot on the flagship station of the team. Mm-hmm. It's the head coach. You have that responsibility. You also have the responsibility of delegating responsibilities. You have to come up with a defensive coordinator or hire defensive coordinators who come up with your game plan, a scheme from week to week. You have to do the same on offense, which there's guys like Brian Daboll, though, where they're in the head. They're in charge of scheming up that offense. You know what I'm saying? Like it's his brainstorm, like formulating that. And not to say that Dan Campbell has nothing to do with that, because he damn well does. And from Ben Johnson's mouth himself, he said, Dan tells us what it's going to be. And then we draw up the game plan around his philosophy of how he wants to win this game. Mm-hmm. Head coach is just a different spot, but like as a coach, and I'm talking like X's and O's, there's no denying what Brian Daboll's done with Daniel Jones. And you're the one that brought up the fact that throughout the season that Daniel Jones lost all of his starting receivers.
No receivers.
Lost every single one.
Isaiah Hodges looks good, but that's a nobody.
He wasn't supposed to be seeing the field.
No.
James Ritchie wasn't supposed to see the field.
No.
They traded what the hell is his name? It's in Kansas City. Kadarius Toney. Brian, and mind you too, that's 2 sets of coaches. And granted, one's his rookie year for Daniel Jones and then Pat Schumer, I think it was, and then Joe Judge. to be fair, his competition is Joe Judge. in terms of like scheming offense, that's not much. But even Joe Judge has the same role Dan Campbell does to delegate that role and find somebody to like fit a scheme for Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones just broke a playoff record, if I'm not mistaken, by being the only guy to throw for 300 plus yards instead of like 70 plus rushing yards and 2 touchdowns as well. Like Brian Daboll, damn good coach.
Yes.
Now Dan Campbell beat him in that head-to-head.
Yes.
Because he's good at other things. Like he has that Ben Johnson. Mm-hmm. He has an AG. Like all that stuff comes into play. I guess it's like styles make matchups, and that's what it is when it comes to like a Dan Campbell versus Brian Daboll. But like in terms of like losing, like Detroit Lions right now, perfect example. They're at risk of losing a Ben Johnson, and in my opinion, if the Detroit Lions lose a Ben Johnson, the Detroit Lions are all right.
Yeah.
Unless they have somebody capable of replacing him, and I could be wrong on that one. That's one of the things I'm looking forward to being wrong about, and I hope that I'm wrong about it. You know, the Detroit Lions losing Ben Johnson still be able to produce the way they did produce on offense this year. But when you have a Brian Daboll and it's his offense, when you have a Kyle Shanahan and it's his offense, when they lose a Mike McDaniels, when Brian Daboll loses whoever the hell his offense coordinator is this year, they're still going to be able to formulate something on that offense, and that offense is still going to be a strength because it's theirs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's the same thing with my guy Sean McVay too. Sean McVay's lost plenty of coordinators, plenty of position coaches at this point.
You see what happens to a guy
his.
like Dan Quinn when he loses a Kyle Shanahan. Their offense kind of crumbles. The team never gets back to where it was, because it is important to have a guy that can do that. It is important to have a guy that can be that X's and O's master when you aren't one yourself. And Dan Campbell will tell you himself he's not the X's and O's guy. He's not that kind of coach. So I expect them, even if they do lose Ben Johnson, they will take a step back, but I expect them to identify the right talent to kind of go out there and get a hire that will have a similar effect of Ben Johnson, because they did it one time already, and Dan Campbell has obviously shown that he has the propensity to identify the weak points and the highlights of his coaching staff and make adjustments based on the results that those are getting. So we've seen him do it with a guy like Anthony Lynn, moving on from him, going into a Ben Johnson. We saw him move away from Aubrey Pleasant. And I don't know if that's the only thing that helped the defense, but it definitely didn't hurt it because the defense started playing a lot better. So he has the delegation ability to go out there and choose someone that will fit his scheme, to choose someone that will fit the mantra of how he wants to play football, and then look over it and oversee it and make sure it's working. So that is a different skill set, and he has proven, like Sam said, that he is a fantastic leader of men, that he is a guy that will go out there and can make things happen. And if the Lions didn't start 1-6, if the Lions started 2-5, he'd be coach of the year. The Lions started 2-5. That means they're in the playoffs. That means Dan Campbell wins Coach of the Year. That means they beat the Vikings in the playoffs. Like, it would have happened.
Chris, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said in particular, Easy, but the one counterpoint, and Spencer just kind of touched on it, is that at the end of the day, football is about winning, and while Brian Daboll seems to take more control of his team and be more, I guess, directly responsible for results, I think you do got to really give Dan Campbell a lot of credit, and not that you aren't, but the reason why you could still say Dan Campbell's a better coach is because the Lions looked like at the end of the year the better team than the Giants, and that was partly because Dan Campbell was selecting Ben Johnson, was selecting Aaron Glenn, was making the coaching changes and the shuffling that he was doing all year. That's extremely valuable, and at the end of the day, winning is everything. The best team is the one that you award the winner to. So, like, I know that's a stupid and cliche phrase, but that's
in a straight head-to-head matchup.
That would be the one argument. I agree with what you're saying.
Argument,
but that would be the devil's advocate.
So the way you present, and I agree with you with the point, and I said that during the whatever you want to call it, my take, that Dan Campbell beat Brian Daboll in a head-to-head matchup.
Pardon it. But
in terms of, like, you want to factor in the fact that Dan Campbell also hired an Anthony Lynn. That was a complete failure too. You know what I'm saying? Like,
fair.
Again, it's a styles thing, right? Like Dan Campbell's he's head and shoulders above Brian Daboll in the category of being a leader, being a head coach. You know what I'm saying? Like the guy you look forward to when all else fails. The guy you look forward to when you're sitting at 1-6. The guy's gonna pull you up from that 1-6. The guy, you know what I'm saying? Like a good teachable coach, but an X's and O's is Brian Daboll. So it's like, I guess there isn't an exact answer. It depends like what you're looking for in your head coach.
Yeah.
And that would be then
different
you find
strokes
your
for
answers.
different folks.
100%.
It is like that. And obviously like to have that kind of sustainability to where if we lose an offensive coordinator, if we lose something like that, we still have an Andy Reid. We still have a Kyle Shanahan. We still have a Sean McVay. We still have somebody like that the offense isn't going to miss a beat, that you're not going to fall off of something like that. But it also does give you confidence that you have a guy like Dan Campbell, that these guys will play for him on every snap. These guys will play for him on every down. Every breath they take is going to be about football, because that's what it's like from the top.
Yeah.
They see the passion that he has for the game. They see what it means to him to produce a winner here, and it bleeds down throughout the entire organization.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a better
100%.
way of summing it up. No, I mean, you hit, I can't. I don't have a rebuttal to that. I agree with you.
Yeah.
I want to say 100%, but you guys ruined it for me. So I'll just say I concur.
I mean, the reality is that if you're a Lions fan or a Giants fan, you have to be thrilled with the jobs your respective head coaches are doing. Hey, I just have good points, but yeah, with Dan Campbell, I was as big a skeptic as any, but now after seeing how they ended the season, seeing how they didn't quit on him when they were 1-6 and turned out to be 9-8, I'm all in. I think he is a guy that can be the coach that leads this team to the promised land. I'm not going to say what the promised land is yet, but it's
Wait. Say one time.
He said Dan Campbell could be the coach that leads his team to the promised land.
I like that.
Well, just with the roster upgrades they're going to make.
What's the promised land, Sam?
I mean, it's got to be the Super Bowl.
Whoa! I mean, with or without Ben Johnson?
Well, I think he'll be gone, because I think he'll take a head coaching job in this offseason, because he's just that coveted. He did that good of a job. But I mean, you just see how the last couple drafts have gone with Brad Holmes. How guys like Amon-Ra, St. Brown, and Penei Sewell develop so much from year 1 to year 2. I expect that from some of the Lions rookies this year. And then, do you trust Brad Holmes to cook up another good draft in 2023? I know we all do. I sure do. And I believe now that Dan Campbell is the guy that can get it done. It's just with Brian Daboll, in year 1, you're already seeing a playoff win on the road, with Daniel Jones maybe playing the best game of any quarterback on the weekend. Daniel freaking Jones, the guy that was left for dead. He was
that's a great
unbelievable.
point. He looked amazing running the ball in the first half.
Yeah.
And he just looked so comfortable doing it. Like when he got up, I was always like, "Oh, I don't know if I'm a quarterback taking that many hits," but he just
The behind the back handoff
chilling.
was
That was nasty too.
that was balling.